Tonight, Rebecca is back from the real world to tell you about working in visual effects and CG and everything else that she does. For those that saw it last year, she did her and Luke, who's also here, did a capstone that integrated CG, animation, 2D compositing, and a bunch of other cool things. So this was something that she started last year as a presentation, and she's kind of built on that since she graduated. So welcome back, Rebecca. Please take it away.
Thank you. Okay.
And if you have questions, please stop her throughout.
Yeah, if I explain something or it's confusing, just let me know. Okay. Yeah, I want to see you guys. Okay, whatever. Okay. So I'll be going over the whole CG pipeline. And then after that, I'll be talking about some of the jobs that you can get from it and what the most popular ones are. So to start off, here's a great image of Shrek before and after the CGI. If you guys want to take a look at that. Okay. So to start off, I just wanted to show you a whole map of the pre-production, production, and post-production process when working on a film or a TV show. It's very much similar. So we're going to be mostly focusing on the production part with all of these layout, modeling, texturing steps. So I'll go through each step and usually give you like the program that is used most often, and then to give you like descriptions about what happens during it so that you can get a better understanding of like maybe it's something you'll be interested in doing. So you can start off by going over the general softwares that are used for 3D animation and VFX. So the most common one is Maya, which is the default choice for a lot of large studios. And then 3ds Max, it's not really used that often. It's for very smaller productions. Blender and Houdini are used a lot more as well, but Blender is free. And then Houdini allows for more complex effects. That's like simulations and particle effects, water, fire. And then Blender is not really used too often in studios. And then also is Cinema 4D. So those are the main ones. So the first step is usually modeling. So the programs you can use for that, aside from the ones I just listed, are ZBrush and Mudbox. So these are like sculpting programs. ZBrush costs kind of a lot of money, but it lets you sculpt things as if you were actually sculpting them, like you were sculpting clay or something like that. So it's really cool. It lets you do a lot of things. And then Mudbox is very similar to ZBrush, but it's just the Autodesk version. So for modeling, you usually start off with references, concept art, and measurements that you get from like your client, or if you just have your own concept art that you want to create a 3D model for, you can do that. So what you want to work towards is having less polygons, which would be better, because the more polygons you have, the higher the file is going to be, and it's going to take a really long time to render and just work within the file. So good topology helps your program run faster. Any animations and deformations would look better, like something like fluid facial expressions when you're animating it. So if you look at the image where it says bad and good, on the left side, the topology is not really good. And if you animated it, it would look really weird when it renders. So that's the main concepts for modeling. And then after modeling is done, you want to UV map your model. So this is the process of taking your 3D model and flattening it into a 2D image that you can apply textures to it. So you would usually go in your 3D software, and then there's a tab for UV mapping, and they offer an automatic map, so the computer will generate it for you. But sometimes if it's something like a face or a hand, you might have to go in and create these seams. If you look at the picture, there's like these white lines where you can cut up your model and flatten it the way that you want it to. So UV is used instead of X, Y, and Z because those are already used when you're talking about the axes in your 3D world. So you'll take your UV map, and then if you have a really complex model, then you'll have to create multiple UV maps in this like space called a UDIM. So for this picture, they have a bunch of UDIMs, and like, let's say like, what if they wanted like the top half of the model to be metal and the lower half plastic, or there's just a bunch of other things going on. You can sometimes sort your UV map to have UDIMs based on what material you want to assign to it. So you can sort it out like that, or if you want higher resolution textures, you're going to want to spread your UV out over a bunch of UDIMs so that nothing is like crammed into one. So you'll usually UV map it so that these checkers are like very similar in size. It doesn't have to be exact, but this just shows you that on like the left side, everything looks like the same resolution, but on the right side, they weren't mapped right. So then they look all blurry, or some things are too small, so it just won't look good. So once you're done exporting your UV map, you'll export the mesh as like an OBJ or FBX, and then your UV map will carry over into the texturing program you use. So you just export your model and then it should be good to go. So for texturing, the programs you can use Maya and like all these other general programs for texturing, but they're like very annoying and don't let you do too much unless you know the program very well. So you can use Mari and Substance to get these really cool textures, and you can customize them a lot. So Substance gets a free trial, I think, for a year for students. And then I haven't used the other one, but this is an image from Substance, and usually you'll import your model and then you'll have to set up your model and bake the textures so that it can create like these normal maps and all this that you'll use later on. But if you look at the interface, you can see you have like these materials and then layers. So it's basically like painting on to the model. So this is what your UV map will look like from the 3D program. So Substance allows you to paint either in 2D or 3D. So you can paint on the model or you can paint on the flat surface. But this is just what it looks like and how the UV maps are used for texturing. So once you're done texturing, painting, and doing all you like, you're going to export your textures. So Substance lets you pick from all these render options. Like you have Arnold, Redshift. If you're exporting for like a game engine, you can export for Unreal, V-Ray. So you can usually export for almost anything, and you can create your own shaders based on what you need. So if you're ever unsure what you need, you can always look up. This image on the right side is like what you need for each shader. So if I was exporting for Arnold, I would need everything here, like the base color, roughness, the normal map. So you just make sure you check those when you're exporting so that they'll give you the files when you're ready to bring it back into your 3D program. So you'll take all your exported files and then bring them back into Maya. So in this image, you can see there's a bunch of nodes going on. So you just drag your files in, and then you have to understand your shader in order to understand where you should connect these specific files. So if you can you probably can't read, but like there's like the metallic, the normal map, a roughness map, and like the normal color. So you just assign that based on where your shader usually tells you to. So I know shaders like Arnold and Redshift, they have different naming conventions for their shaders. So you might have to relearn a shader, but a lot of it's the same. So once you're done texturing, you can go into rigging. So rigging for objects is a little bit simpler than rigging for character. But so rigging for objects, you usually use this so that you can create easy controls for animators. And instead of letting animators key the model itself, you'll create these curves, if you can see in the picture. So you can set animations for like rotation, translation, scale, so that the animator doesn't go in and like mess up the model or anything. So you can use curves and shapes to create these controllers that animators can use. And then for characters, there's a lot going on. So for characters, you need to create joints. If you want to use IK and FK handles, you can. Then you'll have to orient joints, create the facial rig, paint skin weights, and then create controls. So there's a lot going on, but I'm going to go through that. But there are some plugins offered that can make rigging really easy and simple. You literally just like click a button and it'll do it for you. One is called Advanced Skeleton, and it's pretty useful. So just these are the steps. So you'll create the joints, and then you need to make sure the orientation for the joints all line up so that if you're animating like a finger, some of them aren't oriented the wrong way, so they won't like move in opposite directions. And then if you want to use IK and FK handles, you can. It just allows you animating the like body more fluidly if you want to use them. So IK handles help you keep the feet and hands in place while the body moves around. And then FK handles just help with moving the legs and arms around if you need it. And then you always rig the body and then the head separately. So this is just like a facial setup. You would create joints from the neck and then up through the head and then the mouth. And then if you need a tongue and teeth, you can also rig that. And then once you add all your joints, you'll add the skin weight painting. So you go in and then you have to assign the geometry to the joints that you want it closest to. So if you create like a joint for your wrist, you need to paint the skin around that so that the joint is affecting that wrist movement. So sometimes if you paint the skin wrong, if there's a picture on the right here, that I'll move the arm and then it'll pull other parts of the body that accidentally has the paint painted on it. So you have to just go through all your joints and then make sure that the paint is weighted properly. So once you're done with all that, there's layout artists. So I have a little video that we can just see that explains layout because it's a little weird to hear, but layout artists just design the shot frame, camera paths, angles, and set up the whole sequence or the scene so that animators can go in and start animating after. So it's not load. I just found someone's reel online. But so what they'll do is so on the one side is going to be layout and the other side is going to be the final animation. So the layout artist on the right side will just go in and do really basic animation just so that people can see the like camera shot and the angles and just figure out everything with layout. So this is really helpful and it like provides kind of like an animatic. This is really important if you're doing like a full CG film or a TV show or whatever. But if you have something animating in like a live action, then you can definitely go in and key it out so you can see what it kind of looks like. But so that's layout. And then with layout is also tracking. So there's a bunch of stuff that you can do for tracking, and it's really helpful if you're working with live action film. So there's camera tracking, object tracking, rotomation, and deformation. Camera tracking is one that's used a lot. You just use a live camera footage and then track the motion using like objects and planes so that you can accurately add objects into the 3D space. So you usually use a lot of camera info that is recorded from set, and you can go in and recreate the scene with very basic shapes. And then object tracking is required when you need to add an effect to an object. And then rotomation tracks motion of character live action footage to make sure that you can add a 3D character into a space. And then deformation is tracking something that deforms, like skin, water. Maybe you need to track fire, add more fire or something. So there's a lot of tracking that goes on in live action VFX, and it's really important to get these accurate or else it's going to look really out of place in the scene. Like, so for this picture, they tracked full bodies of these people so that they can go in and have the people interact with this penguin. And then there's effects and simulation, and a lot of research and development goes into this. And this is stuff like adding smoke, fire, particles, liquid, and it can be really creative. I'm just going to show you guys some stuff. Yeah, so this takes a lot of like understanding of how things work, and then mathematics, maybe some coding if you're into coding. But it's really creative and can be a fun time, but it takes a lot of work. Like this one's fire and smoke. So, and then if you see, like, these are all made in Houdini in the lower left corner. So Houdini is a really great program to learn if you want to be an FX artist, because it's super helpful. Okay, and then there's lighting. So lighting artists are really helpful with bringing the whole scene together. So you can take 3D elements and blend them into the scene using lighting. Each different renderer has different types of lighting and lights that you can use. Maya has some of their own, but then if you use like Arnold or Redshift or some of the other ones, you can have a special lighting. And then they all have these settings. And for example, for lighting, if you increase samples, it helps the render quality better, but then it also increases the render time like a lot. So lighting, there's a lot to know about it, and it really helps if you know how to do it well, because then your model will look good. But to help you do lighting pretty well, you can use an HDRI. So in Maya, you can put a skydome in and then assign an HDRI image, and then it will use the lighting from that image to light your own model, so that a lot of the times if you have a reflective model, you'll need to get the reflections in your render, so then you can use an HDRI to get those reflections. So this is an example of like what an HDRI does to your model. So they just threw this on a skydome, and then the correct lighting would show up, and they didn't really do anything else for these models, but you can see like the sunset looks pretty good on the model, and then it changes when it rotates on the right side. So then rendering. So there's a bunch of different renderers. So there's Arnold, V-Ray, Mental Ray, RenderMan, Cycles. Arnold is a very popular one, but it's also expensive. There's V-Ray, Mental Ray is free. RenderMan is Pixar's renderer. And they were very popular until like 2 years ago when they like came out with an update, and it's like just been very wonky ever since then. And then there's Cycles, which is Blender's renderer if you use Blender. So when you're rendering, you can also render AOVs, which will allow you to composite better. So let's say you have a model and then you want to render like the beauty pass, the specular pass, opacity. So you can use Maya or your 3D program to export each one of these individually. And then when you're compositing, you have more options when you're editing, and like can change the colors. So they're really helpful, and it'll help you especially with color and lighting. So once you're done rendering, you can bring it all together with compositing. So there's Nuke, After Effects, and Fusion. As you guys know, Nuke is node-based, and then After Effects is layer-based. So a compositor, just will take all the elements and composite them together. And then the top jobs in VFX right now are compositors. FX artists, lighting artists, environmental artists, and technical directors. It's really important to know how to composite CG because it's so popular right now. So a lot of these things, the top jobs right now are very closely related to CG and like VFX. So it's really good to have a 3D background so that you know how to do these things. And then FX artists are really hard to come by. So if you know how to do like a mathematical type, artistic type of work, then it's really helpful. And then I have like a little link here if anyone's interested. It just explains the top jobs and explains like what FX artists do or what lighting artists do. So that is all. I know I went through that really quickly, but enjoy this meme of Shayna's favorite movie from 2019.
Still haven't seen it.
I have not either.
Need to. Have you seen it, Shayna?
I fast forwarded through my screener.
That counts.
I have 2 questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, load them up.
So my first question is, so if I'm interested in like VFX or 3D modeling or something along those lines, but I'm not necessarily interested in entertainment or Hollywood, but is there any other opportunities sort in this area, like such as like motion graphics and things like that?
Yeah, I would say if you want to look into like gaming, commercials, what else is there? Definitely a lot of things.
Experiences, rides.
Yeah, oh yeah, that too. Like VR stuff. Yeah, Disney parks if you want to do like big rides. There's definitely
architecture.
Oh yeah, architecture. Someone said the medical field. Yeah, there's definitely a like market everywhere for it.
Mm-hmm. And my second question is, with Blender specifically, how do you think it'll become more like integrated into like the VFX and 3D modeling pipeline and like in the next like over the next decade?
I think for larger studios it won't, but definitely for smaller ones it will, because there's a lot of material like tutorials from people because it's free. I think studios right now are mostly using Maya and Houdini because they're very strong, but I know Maya is getting like, everyone's tired of Maya. They're not really developing anything new. So, I mean, there's definitely a possibility, but I don't think within the next like 5 years, but maybe in the future, hopefully there will be some other program.
Yeah, there's only one studio I know of that actually has Blender in their pipeline for majority of their stuff, although they do also use Houdini and Maya, but Blender was like their big tool for most of their start.
Okay.
That was a Barnstorm VFX.
Cool. Other question.
Hello, I have a question.
Hi, Jacob.
Hi. I'm just curious, like, oh my God, Brad's profile picture is just staring at my soul right now. Anyways, I just have a question, like, what do you think between like making your own textures in Substance and stuff, or just like, you know, there's a lot of databases that have free textures and they're very readily available and they come with, you know, all the different passes and, you know, specular and all that stuff. So what do you think, like do you think someone should devote that much time to making their own textures, or what's your opinion on that?
I think that's like up to the person, because when I'm making a project, I personally want to do my own textures if I can. I mean, last minute, if I can't, then I'll just snag something. But if you want to like learn how to do textures and use it in your own project, then I think you definitely should go for it. But if it's just something that like you don't want to be a texture artist, then you can definitely like find something online. And then Substance has a lot of like built-in textures that you can just throw on a model if you're not looking for anything like intense. So I think it's like definitely up to the person. Like if you don't have time to create your own textures, then yeah, that's totally fine. But I know creating a texture in Maya using like Hypershade itself is insane. So I would definitely
Yeah.
go for Substance. Yeah.
It's definitely like Maya. My experience with Maya and making textures is like I started my film with making textures that I made like I took pictures of things and I brought them into Photoshop, and then I made like bump passes and all this stuff and I brought it into Maya. And there's definitely like when you make your own, it's definitely like you sometimes you run into some issues, but like when I actually made them like procedurally, like in Maya kind of and Mudbox, I also did like I don't know, it's definitely I didn't ever use Substance, but it's definitely like very rewarding and cool to make your own textures and do that procedurally and have that kind of like really like unique touch to it, but definitely very time consuming. And there's a lot of little errors you run into. And Maya's Hypershade is definitely like, at first it was super confusing to me. After a while, I kind of started understanding how it worked. And then like I saw some videos of people doing like advanced texturing in Maya and like using the node graph in there, you can do quite a bit. It's just
Yeah.
that there's definitely I don't know if it's as intuitive as other programs. I haven't tried them, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely insane to do it in Maya. I also want to mention you can do effects in Maya if you need to learn it in there. You can do cloth sims, effects, fire, rigging, water. What's already such for texture? Oh, I would definitely go for a Substance Painter if you want to do texturing, because there's a lot of tutorials out there on it, and you can get it for like I think it's like a year or two for free if you're a student. Or I just keep pretending I'm a student and using different emails if you need to do that too.
Oh yeah, Bifrost. Brad said Bifrost.
Oh, okay.
Bifrost. I used that and it was fun, honestly. It was cool. I want to use Houdini though, but Bifrost pretty cool, pretty fun to
A
use.
big update, Bifrost Graphs. You should check it out again. Like it's the new version of Maya. It's pretty cool.
Someone said, how do you integrate programming into your workflow? If you want to do programming, the best, okay, you should do like rigging or effects, because those are things that can like really, if you know how to code, you can really save time for coding your own rigs and effects, because those are things that really run into a lot of trouble and need troubleshooting. So if you want to code, I would learn Python for that. So yeah, if you can code and you can rig, then you will definitely have no problem finding a job. Okay, should I just do tutorials for Substance Painter? Who's that? Yeah, if you want to learn Substance Painter, I would definitely suggest using tutorials to at least learn the interface at first. And then like, honestly, you can just go ahead and like play around with a model in Substance and learn your own textures and how to do things. But definitely watching tutorials on how to use like mats, and they have a bunch of things in there that you can use for like rust and metal and fabric. So that would be really helpful to learn.
Wait, I have another question.
Yeah.
So after the like putting the texture on and then painting it, we'd have to light it. And so our idea is to light a door. So we have to model a door, texture it, and then paint it to texture it, and then lighting. What would you suggest for like a wood?
Substance Painter has wood materials, and you can easily go in and like change the grain, change the color, add dirt, and it
cool.
It will literally take you like 10 minutes, because it's like just you throw the material on, and like if you want to change the rotation of the grain, the angle, like anything, like it's definitely customizable. So
okay, cool. And then you said that so we don't have to make our own textures, but if I wanted to, How would I do that?
So if you wanted to do your own, the like way that I originally learned was just exporting your UV map, and then you'll have like for a Dora, you'll have like this rectangle, and then you'll bring your UV map into Photoshop, and you'll have like this square image with the rectangle, and then you can just throw on, if you have a high resolution image of a door, you can just throw it wherever your rectangle lines up, and then you'll export it and just apply it as a texture back in Maya. So
Oh,
it's,
yeah, because you can, okay. Totally, that makes so much sense.
so I mean, if you have like a picture of a door that you like, then you can easily put on a model.
Oh, cool.
And then with Photoshop, you can make your own like normal maps and bump maps and all that. So there's definitely also tutorials on how to create your own maps like that. So
Cool, thank you. Wrote that all down.
I actually have one more question, if that's okay.
Mhm.
So specifically, I'm looking to like maybe go into like graphic design or motion graphics or UX or whatever. Is there a place for 3D in those areas, like in graphic design?
yeah, I would definitely say, I mean, I guess it depends on like the company you're working for, but there's always a place for 3D. And like, if you want to do like anything for like commercial or advertising, I know learning like 2D particle simulations is really helpful, and like 3D fonts. So there's always a place for that. And then I'm sure you like will pick up more on the way if you're like learning 3D and like, what else would it be used for? I know commercials like use like little characters and stuff like that. So there's always something in that field that you'll be able to find.
Thanks.
What do you want to know? Jackson, do you want to show your 3D thing?
Do I want to?
You want feedback on 3D?
I mean, it's rendering right now.
Didn't know if you had a playlist.
I have two. I'm just doing like random frames to see what it looks like because my computer hates me. But here's one frame. Here's another frame. Here's a frame that's not done yet. Whoa. Vector rendering takes 10,000 years when you have everything cranked because your textures require it. That's my TED talk.
Wait, who's at the computer?
It's a model with a helmet put on it because I don't know how to do hair.
Rebecca, how do you do hair?
Oh, I forgot about, okay. So in like Maya or other programs, there's fur and hair, like you can generate effects splines, or also in Blender. If you have hair, you can generate it across a surface on geometry. But hair is like one of the most complex and like hardest things to control, especially if it's like windy or anything. So there's a lot of like development and research on hair. But in Maya, it's in like the effects tab, and you can like play around with it. You can make grass, hair, fur, ropes, and it's very customizable. You can change like the width of it and the length, and like you can comb it. But rendering hair is a bit of a different process because it depends on what renderer you use, but there's a lot of playing around you have to do with it, but it's definitely easy. And then the render time for anything for hair related is gonna like go through the roof. So you definitely have to watch out for that. But yeah, you can do that in Maya.
Something also, if anyone's interested in like a very brief overview of all these processes, Pixar has this kind of, what the hell is it called? Brad knows what I'm talking about. This like mini course online where they show you like their whole pipeline, and they go through like the same kind of thing like Rebecca is going to, like just like every processy, and just kind of like simulations and rigging, animation and texturing.
Is it the thing
If
with
they
the
do, yeah. What?
Is it the thing with the penguins in Madagascar?
I don't know.
There's like a
I,
video.
I was thinking the same thing. I remember watching the Penguins one.
You'd remember that.
I think it's through Khan Academy. I think it's
Yeah.
like something like something in a box. I don't know.
Yeah. They go. It's like a little mini course for people that are like. I mean, they're kind of marketing it to people who are literally like in kindergarten, but and also people who are like in college. It's like they're just trying to like recruit young people to work for Pixar, basically. But it's like a free course that just shows you their whole process. It's pretty informative on a very like general level. It's pretty cool.
And a link to the penguins one. But yeah.
So, Rebecca, if someone had zero knowledge of CG, do you feel like they can jump right into something? Like, what is your step one?
So the first class I took freshman year, our job was to model a snowman. So if you were looking to do that, I would like open up your 3D program and just create a snowman with like your spheres, your carrot nose, like they're very basic shapes. And then once you have that, if you want to like create more complex shapes from that, like if you want to actually create like deform the snowman, make it look like a little melty, create a top hat, create a scarf. That's a great way to like figure out how to create like folds in fabric. Can create snow. So you can like definitely start with a simple snowman and then expand upon those shapes and definitely play around with deforming them or creating an environment for the snowman. And then our like second project is create a house. So that's like another good thing. If you want to work on something that's less organic shapes and more structural, creating a house would be pretty cool. And then like if you want to create like some crazy house, that's not some traditional thing, then that's a great way to like use your creativity, maybe use some concept art and then model it based off your concept art. So that's definitely some fun stuff I would start with. I know Blender has the donut tutorial, which is like the first thing you can learn. But yeah, I definitely would start with creating a scene in your head. If you want to sketch it out, you can. And then just figuring out what things you want for that scene. Like 2 or 3 years ago, we did a short little modeling workshop and we did a chair and a table, I think like a plate and forks. So those are like very simple things, but you can create a fork and then it might just be like this really rigid thing. But as you learn 3D modeling more, you can like create a curved fork and create more details and really take it to the next level. So yeah, I would just start with like a plan in your head and then you can always develop it more as you learn how to model better.
Do you want to talk for a sec about making things perfect versus with character?
Yeah. So if you have like concept art and you have like a certain style, so you can either take concept art offline, like let's say you want to model a car. You can just go online, find blueprints from that model, and then import it into Maya and just start going at it. Or you can create things with like a more creative twist and things don't have to be exactly like very structural. So if you have concept art and you want to create this like wacky car, you can definitely use blueprints as a like starting point. But if you want to create your own twist, add your own style, those are things that will definitely help you like stand out instead of just because like if someone wanted to model a car, you can go on Turbo Squid and go get it. But if you add your own character, your own style, then that's going to make you stand out. That's going to add story to the model instead of it just being like one straightforward piece. So I know when like if you want to be a modeler, when people are looking at your portfolio, they definitely want to see your own voice in it, even if you're doing very simple modeling shapes. So definitely adding your own creative like twist to it. You don't have to model things exactly to like a right angle. You can do your own twist. It doesn't have to be perfect. So add your own uniqueness to it.
I don't have another question, but I hope other people do.
Luke, what question did you have?
I think my biggest question would be what's like the biggest challenge, like what's the most challenging thing you've had to model, and why was it a challenge?
The hardest thing I think I decided to model was my freshman year. We had to model a creature and I chose like a rabbit. And I was like, why did I do that? It looks weird. But I think anything that's organic and people know what it looks like, you're gonna have a hard time like making it look good, because like a rabbit, I didn't add fur to it. It was just like this white model that looked weird. But no, it's like, it was definitely hard, but I like didn't know how to do it. And I definitely didn't like do it efficiently, because I'm sure I had so many like polygons and it was just so bad. So actually I made a T-Rex the next semester, and there were so many polygons that my file would shut down every time I opened it. So aliens are easier. No, definitely making sure you're using as little polygons as possible and just using a lot of reference images so it doesn't look really weird. So thank you for your question, Luke.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm imagining your snowman with rabbit ears.
I have my snowman somewhere.
I have one other question I thought of.
Go for it.
What's the difference between designing a CG character for animation versus live action? How do you go about references for something that's a cartoon?
I guess the difference for that, I think a lot more time would have to go into story development and like concept art if it was like for a full CG film, because it's probably going to be, the only reason films are made full CG is because it can't be done in live action. So it's probably going to be something that's really creative and unique, and that has to go along with the same style as the rest of the film. And then for like live action, if you're modeling something, you're doing it so that it can fit into an everyday world. So it's going to look more realistic. So you're going to have a lot more reference images from it. So yeah, I think just the concept and like bringing that character to life for a full CG film is more difficult. But also you don't really know what this world looks like. So it might be easier to just come up with like these objects in the CG film. So creativity is difficult. That's my conclusion. I'd find my snowman for you guys. But if anyone has any other questions.
I have a comment, and I think in CG art, a lot of the time, there's a lot of kind of like, I think people, like Brad was saying, like you want to reference things, you want to make the process as simple as you can. If you can get other people's assets, you can download things from TurboSquid, you can use textures. And I think there's like, generally there's like, wait, am I allowed, can I do this though? Isn't this like if I'm referencing the real world, like, shouldn't I be able to just do this by hand? And it's like, no, not really. Like you can do whatever you want to make the final product, and no one's going to have any idea how you did it anyways. So it's like, there's just a lot of kind of stuff with CG where it might feel like you're like stealing or something. And it's like, yes, you need to have the rights to do it. It's not actually stealing, but it's just, I don't know. I realized that you don't have to do everything from scratch, or you can figure out which things you want to do from scratch. And otherwise, it's like you could literally just be like a set designer and download pieces from TurboSquid and make a scene without having to model a thing. And it's, there's no, I thought it's like a Bob Dylan quote, right? Like somebody there's borrowing and there's stealing or something. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. I'm responding to the chat right now. I'm not even talking to anybody. Okay, that's all I have to say.
No, I agree. But I don't know. I think going off that, like, if you want to model something from real life, you can just, if you want to, you can go on TurboSquid and like download a model and like create it how you want it. You can just take a base model and then go off from that and like create your own work from that as well. If you like find it difficult to start getting from like starting from just a square, you can just go and take a model. So you can buy someone's work and change it if you would like.
I guess I have a question.
Yep.
So, I mean, I haven't really been on the CG grind as much as my fellow capstone kids have been. But I was wondering if you, because you used some CG in your capstone project, I was wondering if you had any suggestions on, like, especially since this is basically our first go at CG, like, do you have any like do's and don'ts or like tips or like things we definitely shouldn't do? Like, I'm wondering, because we're doing the doors, right? Like, should we just try to make it a door on a wall and then it barely interacts with anything? Like, the less interaction the better? Or like, should we try to do some interesting things where like the door kind of like blossoms from the wall and has like a crazy you know intro into the scene somehow? Like, or should we like completely not have it interact with anything at all? Like, what do's and don'ts do you have?
I think you should create one version of the story where you don't have like a limitation in your head and you just create the story on how you envision it. And then you should have another version of minimum like CG stuff. Just so you know, like you always have a backup of like, oh, just in case this doesn't work, like our story will still stand without like this crazy stuff happening to this door. But I mean, if you're only talking about a door, I don't think it's going to be like that insane. Like if you had a creature or you had fire or you had smoke, like I'd be like, maybe just like keep it to a minimum. But like if you're just having this door and then I don't know if like the door is going to be in the same setting the entire time, then the lighting won't change that much. Like it's all depend. I like would like to know more about your story, but I think if it's just the door for right now, you'll like be able to get what you want out of it without going too crazy. So
Gotcha. Thank you.
definitely all about like planning. Do I capture each other? For HDRIs on set, I personally haven't done it, but I just know that you can get a 360 camera and just capture it. Or if you don't have a 360 camera, a lot of people just take their normal camera and then snap a bunch of pictures. There's a certain amount that you would need to create a full HDRI. I think it's like 60 pictures. But honestly, it's like very easy to just take the pictures and throw it into a Skydome. So HDRIs are not as scary as they seem. You just can snap a picture at a bunch of different exposures and then can combine them together to get that lighting that you need for your model.
Do you have anything that you've made that you want to show everybody to, as an example of this process?
I need to think about that. I don't know what I have. See, my hard drive got deleted this past year, so I'm like, what do I have to show? You can watch Skylight on YouTube if you want.
Drop the link.
Oh God. Okay. If you have the link, I don't know where that is.
So I was like, just open it. Gotta like dig through our Discord.
No, I have it.
Do you have it like in a more accessible spot?
Yeah. I got it. Any other
Luke, do you have anything to add about working on a CG? Have you
I mean, I was very blessed that I knew very little about CG, and Rebecca was just very good at basically delivering everything in the most foolproof way possible. Where it did take me a while to like figure out like which passes were useful in which scenarios and stuff, but yeah, I think so. I guess in that case, my biggest advice would just be like, whoever is exporting the CG stuff, make sure you actually talk to them about what all the different passes are for, because I was just kind of like guessing, and so I was like misusing them sometimes. But then I actually talked to Rebecca, and she was like, "Well, you use this for the reflections," and I was like, "Oh, nice." And then it made it way easier to like incorporate them. So yeah, I think just figuring out a good workflow with whoever is exporting the CG, it makes compositing it way easier. Because yeah, that's, I don't know.
That was good.
Yeah.
And then just also I want to emphasize, if you're trying to integrate CG, keep track of like your camera lenses and all that you're using on set. Because if you need to track anything, you're gonna need like the lens data and everything to make sure the tracking's all right. So keep good records. Yay.
Organize your files very well.
Oh yeah, that too. Jacob knows what's up.
Kiki keeps disappearing.
She said her sound's not working.
In case, Rebecca, you didn't see, the doors is like the main character.
Oh. Oh.
There's going to be a lot of doors. So
Oh.
Like Monsters Inc. level of doors, or like,
yeah, it's a lot like that.
oh, okay.
But really, it's probably gonna just be one door, but like copy and pasted. Like if you
We were thinking each door has like a different personality for the location it brings you. But it would be the same door, just with different textures, I guess, after hearing the presentation.
Gotcha. Okay.
Oh, I was saying it should be more supernatural and less photoreal.
Yeah, if it's gonna be a bunch of them, or I mean, at least have like one specific one that's like, oh, this one's crazy.
Then that's it. If you have like shots where you have like a bunch where you can see like multiple at the same time, or even if not, I'd also play around with like making them. If you want to have a bunch of them, don't try to like do it all through the modeling or like texturing even. There are probably a lot of ways that you can just use like the 2D compositing stuff with like enough like color correction and like different like distortions and playing around in 2D to make them different, just make your life a little easier. So that way, yeah, as long as you get one or two like solid like CG assets done, the rest can be done in an area you're all more comfortable with.
Do you suggest they do doors at night or during the day, which is easier to composite?
I mean, at nighttime is because you can hide a lot of stuff.
It's great.
But also, this just reminded me, I can show you my sophomore year film. We did half of it in 2D animation. So if you wanted to do 2D doors, that's a creative thing that you can do. Hold on. Yeah, 2D is also like a very cool option to go with. If you would like. I don't know if you guys are into the graphic motion stuff.
Are you going to screen share something?
I'm not right now. I'm trying to find it.
Oh,
Thought you guys were just like ignoring me.
we're watching and waiting.
Hey, I don't know where Syracuse's Vimeo is.
Well, we're about to conclude. Do you have any parting words while you try to find your
I'm gonna
project from 3 years ago?
here. It's on Facebook for some reason. Concluding words. Do a lot of planning and stay organized. And then if something doesn't look like how you thought it would in your head, it's okay. Because it doesn't have to. You can just say it's a creative style choice. Yeah. And you guys can also ask me questions whenever you want.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Rebecca is a very busy person. So
No, I'm not busy for Shayna.
she's not busy for me. Isn't that nice? So yeah. Ask me if you need to be put in touch with her and I will connect you. But Jacob is also a really good resource too. Cool. Okay.
Yes, I'm available for questions also for anything. I like talking about this stuff. So, and that's why I'm here, even though I'm not in school. So